Okay.
Live
And
on Facebook.
yes, it goes live on Facebook, and we get between 500 to 23,000 views. And then from there, all right. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am comedian Nazareth, and we come to you every week, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And we pray for you guys that everything is good, the coronavirus is away from you, that you're safe, and the goal of the Laughter for All since we started is to interview comedians. Laughter for All comedians, funny comedians that I work with, that I've seen, and we get we talk about life. This is not stand-up comedy podcast where if you want to hear our comedy, go to YouTube. You can put my guest name, Seth Tippetts, or you can put my name and you can watch stand-up comedy. This is about real life. We open up, we talk about life. Now, in the last 59 episode, this is not your normal episode because on the last 59 episode, I've interviewed probably over 30 comedians that they call themselves Christian comics. They work in the Christian market or the corporate market, but they are, they can put the label Christian on it. This is the first episode where the funny guy, Seth Tippetts, he's not a Christian. He's not, he calls himself an atheist, which is fine. So we're gonna talk about life. We're gonna talk about commonality. His parents are Jewish. I'm from the Holy Land, Christian Palestinian. So why not talk about our commonalities, what we have in common, his life as a comedian, and we'll just you can learn from what he shares, his view on life, his view on comedy and all that, and we can just enjoy it. So, Seth, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah, great.
Uh,
Thanks for inviting me.
Let me introduce you. I know I couldn't find a bio on you, so I came up with my own. I did some research. I said, Seth is he started in theater, and he sings, he does theater. He's a former University of Utah basketball player. He's a software engineer, and he was very, very funny. His special on Dry Bar is hilarious. You should go see it in Dry Bar, and you put Seth. And he was born to a Jewish parents in Utah, and his hook is he's 6'9", he's 6'9", and welcome to the show, Seth.
Well, thank you. To be clear, my parents are not as Jewish as some people may. I don't know that I even call them Jewish. My dad, I have a joke about it. He thought we were super Jewish just because he never did the ancestry work, right? And then he got the ancestry stuff back, and he's only 8% Jewish, and I'm pretty sure my mom's like 0%. So, uh, but it is what it is. My dad thought he was pretty proud about that, and so we grew up thinking that, and then turns out not Jewish enough to be proud of. It's whatever. But
8% is 8%. You know what I
eight
mean?
percent,
Uh,
8%, right?
okay,
And I guess typically, or what's the? Isn't there a rule like if your mother's Jewish, then you're Jewish, and if your
right,
mother's not Jewish, then you're not Jewish. So my
exactly.
mother, she doesn't even have the 8%. So I guess I'm 0% Jewish.
Okay, now what was it like being born and raised in Utah?
It was interesting. So I actually grew up in Brigham City, which is a much smaller town. It's about 20,000 folks, and I didn't know any. I was born in Ogden, lived in Brigham City, and it was fine. It was a lot of nice people up there, and I grew up just out in the dirt and you know running around the mountains, and me and my brother go play at the salamander pond, which probably wasn't very sanitary, but so I think it was pretty normal childhood in those respects, like just growing around in the summer months, being dumb kids, and moved down to Sandy, as suburb of Salt Lake, when I was 16 to play basketball because, not to get into a whole story, but I was playing basketball obviously in Brigham City, and the head coach picked his son to be on the varsity squad instead of me, and my
Huh.
dad was pretty pissed about it and stuff, and so we decided to move, and he's a real estate appraiser, and so we decided to move down to Salt Lake because that's where most of his business was anyway, and it was actually pretty funny because he would. I mean, he was dedicated, right? Like it was just basketball to me. Like it was just a sport. But he would wake up, and we'd wake up every morning at 4 a.m., drive all the way down to Sandy because we still lived in Brigham City. We had to transfer schools and stuff in the middle before we had a house and all that. And yeah, so for like 3 or 4 months, I was going to school in Sandy, but driving down an hour every single morning just so I could play on a different basketball team.
Every morning you drove an hour to go to school.
Yep, and then I'd do my homework on the drive back because I'd get done with school, then I have to go to basketball practice till about 6:30, and then I do my homework on the drive back, get a little bit of dinner, and then start the whole thing the next day. So life was definitely basketball back then.
Now, did you wanted to play basketball?
You know, I think this is pretty common for a lot of tall people. Like if you get the height really early, it's not you don't have the same coordination that a lot of other kids have, and so I really didn't like basketball, but it was just one of those things that like I had to do because if you're like the tallest kid by a foot, in your entire class, you kind of have to play basketball. Otherwise, people are going to ask you that question. They give you the shame of like, oh, you don't play basketball, huh? So something's wrong with you. So you're an idiot. That's what it is. So I played basketball more out of just the pressure, the social pressure, until about my sophomore year, and then I started getting pretty good, started getting a little bit better, better handling of my own body by that point because I'd grown into it mentally and with my motor skills. Sounds like a toddler. Oh, I grew into my motor skills. But
No, I've never heard anybody ever in my life tell me I grew up into my motor skills.
I know, right?
I think that's happened.
That's
Now, how tall are you? You're 6'9".
I'm 6'9", yeah.
How
And
tall is your parents? I mean, were
so
they this?
my dad's about, so he was 6'1". He had 3 back surgeries playing football in college, and so now he's about 6 foot, maybe a little shorter. And my mom, she's always told us she's 6'2", but standing next to my brother who's 6'4", like she's probably a little bit closer to 6'4" than 6'2". But yeah, that's one of the reasons my dad really pushed me into basketball because he played football in college and destroyed his back. He's like, it's not worth it, Seth. It's not worth it. Don't sacrifice your body for the game. I know that's what the coaches say, but they're full of crap. Don't talk to the sacrifice your body. It's like, why are we telling like all these kids in their prime to sacrifice their body for a sport they're not getting paid for, right? Like it's
Right. Now, being 6'9", I mean, so you were taller than the others. There's always the stereotype if you're kind of short or if you're overweight, your stereotype is cool, you're bullied. Were you made fun of? Were you bullied at school because you were the tallest kid in school or in the class?
no, I don't think it was ever the height. I think I was just a weirdo. I like I think I mean the height was just there. I like my entire second grade year I was just like really into tie-dye and I didn't have any friends and I would just sit outside at recess waiting for recess to end with my pocket dictionary, like literally reading the dictionary because I had no friends. And so it's like the bullies were right. They were correct in beating me up, and no, not beating me up. It was more verbal, I guess, because it wasn't the 80s. There's no, but yeah, I had some bullies for a couple of years there. Me and my brother just kind of teamed up against them, trying to just go to school and live life. And then I woke up one morning and my dad's like, why are you putting up with this? You're a foot taller than all those kids. And these kids were a
Right.
couple of years older than me. And so one day just enough was enough. And I kind of beat the crap out of the leader. And I think I broke his glasses or something, and they stopped bothering me after
That
that.
was
So
it.
yeah, I woke up one day and I was like, wait a minute, I'm bigger than everybody. Like,
Now, when
yeah,
being 6'9", do you? I mean, this is a stupid question, maybe, but are you scared of anything? Like when you walk in a dark alley or something, are you scared of anything? Do you sometimes you go, oh no, there's a lot of big guys. They're gonna. No, you
yeah.
don't think
There's
that way.
it's pretty rare that there's like a bigger, like, because they'd have to be pretty tall and also pretty wide. Like I'm not super thin anymore. Like I'm about 270. It's not all muscle, but yeah, it's rare that I feel a danger to myself. What, like me and my wife just went on a trip to Portland, and that exact conversation came up. I'm just like, just looking around because there's a quite a few homeless people there right now dealing with
Yeah.
some hard times, and some of them are on some drugs and things pretty clearly because they're screaming at pigeons and they're screaming at you and they're saying get off my street, and you're like, oh, I didn't know this was your street, I thought this was Burnside. um and yeah, I was just walking around, and I don't think I felt like I remember looking at a lot of these people that were just screaming stuff at us, and it was like, I could take him. And so I think I'm at the height where it's like I could take most homeless people if they decided to throw fisticuffs to get in a tussle. Uh,
What is
but
some of the challenges being 6'9"? I mean, normally a lot of people are not 6'9". What kind of challenges do you have in life?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and I'm sure most people have heard a lot of them. I have jokes about them. It's just like buying clothes. I have jokes about having long pants because that's what people think being really tall means, but my body's not proportioned that way. My whole family, we all have really long torsos for some reason, and
Uh-huh.
so in order for me to find a shirt that like actually fits my torso, so I mean, in my dry bar special, people were commenting and they thought it was like a little girl's dress because it was so long. And so it's kind of hard buying clothes. Growing up, it was really hard finding clothes. Nowadays with the internet, it's definitely easier, and there's some specialty shops. There's a place down in St. George in Utah that makes some pretty nice shirts for
Not big and tall,
the
right?
no, now it's what's it called, tall slim tees. But yeah, not big and tall, because big and tall, it was the same problem that you get at Walmart, right? Of course I can go to Walmart and buy me a quadruple X. I didn't even know they made them that small at Walmart. Buy me a quadruple X, but it's so boxy, right?
Uh,
It's like wearing a barrel, a tent
well,
or something. It's yeah. So
so
clothes are tough. Buying cars is always tough. Like a lot of people, like, ooh, I want this car. I want that. Like they have like an aesthetic they're going for when they're looking for a car. And I literally just Google like top cars for tall people, and I just find the highest one on the list with the most headroom, and I go shopping for that. And that's kind of a lot of my shopping is just like,
what do you drive?
firstly, do I fit? I drive a Kia Optima hybrid, and so
Oh,
it was one of the, like, as far as full size sedans go, it had more headroom than others. I previously drove a Kia Soul because it had a lot of headroom, and that's not like an attractive car. That's not a sexy car. No one's out here like, ooh, look at that guy
oh,
with the Kia Soul. And no, it was purely functional, but I've always been more function minded than style, I think. I mean, I always joke around like, oh, I uh, I don't care what the car looks like. If it was a box on wheels, as long as it's got good gas mileage and I fit in it, I will buy it. And then stupid Tesla comes out with that new Cybertruck, and I'm like, I had to say box on wheels. I had to say box on wheels. Like now I have to buy the stupid Cybertruck because I fit and it gets great gas mileage, right?
And
So
now, when did you start feeling, hey, I'm funnier than the average person? I'm funnier than the normal person.
trying to decide if I actually had that feeling or if I was just like, well, nobody else wants to talk to me. Because I remember I was really into like some of those like teenager child sketch comedy shows like the Amanda Show and all that on Nickelodeon growing up.
Mhm.
And I remember just seeing those people and thinking like, I can do that. I can do voices and stuff. And my dad grew up doing a lot of voices. Like he would come read to us at school, and he would take just like these simple children's stories and just make them hilarious because he's like, well, I'm going to do the gingerbread man, but I'm going to do it as Arnold Schwarzenegger, or I'm going to do, so I grew up doing a lot of voices and stuff, and I made my family laugh a lot. And then I think seventh grade was the first time I had like performed. So I was in a musical. I played the King and the King and I because I guess I'm the most Asian person in Brigham City. But no, I think it was because I was the only bass in the seventh grade.
Uh-huh.
But so I performed that, and that was my first like stage thing. And then that later that year, I did a lip sync to Weird Al's "I'm Fat." for the
Uh-huh.
talent show. And so that was my first taste of like, oh, here's what it's like when you get a whole crowd of people laughing.
Yes.
And I think ever since then I just had always looked for opportunities to do that. I made little videos. I Before podcasting was a thing, I was like recording these interviews that I would do with characters that I would voice and just like interview myself basically. And nobody ever listened to these. I never like released them or anything because they were stupid kid stuff. But like, yeah, I think pretty. So probably around the seventh grade was when I started kind of getting that bug of like, ooh, I like people paying attention to me, and I think I like making people happy. And there's anyway, that's
What
kind of
was
the start of it.
what was your first time on stage?
First
Where
time on
and
stage as for stand up.
yeah, stand up.
So I was 16, and I went to Wise Guys Comedy Club in Trolley Square in Salt Lake, and
Mhm.
I watched. I went the first week and watched and just saw what other people were doing for stand up, and then yeah, I came back the next week and I had written a bunch of stuff. I wrote. I think my big bit for my 3 minutes was something about going to the dentist and. And being too big, and so they kept giving me the gas, but it wasn't enough because I was so much larger than a regular person, and so it was like a hey, keep giving me the gas, keep giving me the gas, and then suddenly it was like way too much gas, and I just had some jokes, and it was a little bit of a absurdist thing, like didn't happen exactly that way, and not that any joke does nowadays, but yeah, so that was my first time. I did that as a 16-year-old. I did fairly well. Uh, and then in my head, I just like checked the box of like, yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian now. Right after one open mic, I'm like, yeah, I got it. It's in the bag. And so I kind of just like didn't do it a whole ton throughout high school. Like I did a couple things here and there, talent shows and stuff in high school. I was focused more on film and animation. So I had won a couple animation like competitions
Hmm.
in the state for high schoolers and stuff, and so I was focused on that a lot. Um, didn't really start or want to get back into, or let's see. So I made it on the team at the University of Utah, and I was doing a lot of sketch comedy. So
Hmm.
I was filming sketches with some friends and just some stuff with me and my brother, and then one day all the team players, all the players on the University of Utah basketball team found my stuff. Like I didn't go around sharing it like, hey guys, check this out, it's funny. They just happened upon it, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is great. And so they started just watching all the stuff, and they were quoting things that I had written, and they were quoting some of my sketches, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like my teammates know that I'm a comedian or whatever. And then one day I'm sitting there stretching, and one of the assistant coaches walks up, and so I'm laying down on the ground with my leg up in the air, and he just comes up. He's like, "Hey Seth, you gotta cut out this comedy crap. You can't do this comedy stuff anymore." And I was like, "Ah, good one, coach." And he's like, "No, seriously, it's distracting the team, and we can't have any distractions with this Mountain West tournament coming up. And like if you do comedy again, you're off the team. We'll cut
Wow.
you right then." And
Wow.
so I kind of got banned from doing comedy for the rest of that season. Uh, and then the Coach Boylan got let go, and all his coaching staff, and so they brought in Chris Goviak, and a lot of team players left. A lot of people got cut. I got cut fairly late in the season, so it was kind of too late for me to go audition, try out for another.
Right.
I know that's theater brain. To go try out for another team, and so I kind of was like, well, is my basketball career done? Sure. Like I had a decent job at the time, uh, and so then I started doing stand up in earnest pretty shortly after that, and just kept going. So that was about 2011, I think. But yeah, so that's when I really started like trying. And so I came back and did my first open mic after my 16-year-old open mic where I killed it or whatever. And I come back as an adult with this unearned confidence of like, oh, I got this. I did it back then. I was great. I was the best. And so I come back and just bombed so hard. Oh, I bombed. I bombed like nobody's bombed. And of course, being the idiot that I was, I invited my whole family. And so my whole
Oh,
family,
oh,
like
oh,
you
oh,
never want to invite your family to an early open mic. People make that mistake, but so my whole family was there, and my dad's always been really supportive and stuff. And so afterwards, I was like, "How'd it go?" He's like, "It's good, yeah, it's
oh.
great."
I'm not now. Now you studied, computer engineering, right? And that's your full-time job as an, security and all that for corporate
Yep.
engineering. And but you also did theater and you sing and you played basketball. If you had to imagine, close your eye and said, okay, if let's say a genie comes to you and said, okay, what is the one thing? If you can only do that one thing, what would you be doing? Would it be comedy? Would it be theater? Would it be singing? Would it be improv, sketch comedy, or would it be
Oh,
engineering? What would it be?
that's a tough one because I think it would be comedy just for like my own internal happiness. Like if I was being selfish, I think it'd be comedy for sure because I do love making people laugh. Um, I think it's possible that I might be able to make a bigger impact to the world as a software engineer. So
Uh-huh. But there's a lot of software engineers, but not many comedians. Yeah.
right, and that's yeah. So I guess it's probably better to pick the rarefied path of comedian because at least it's unique in that respect.
I only watch your dry bar comedy, so in that you have to be clean, right? You have
Right.
to be clean. So now, do you normally like when you're doing Wise Guys or different clubs? What do you think? Do you find it harder to write clean? Do you do dirty stuff or?
Um, so early on, my first handful of open mics, I was doing dirtier stuff just because that's what I saw was working, right? Like you've been to open mics. Open mics, there's
Yes,
it's a whole plethora of dirty material, right? And so I
right.
assumed that's what comedy was, and so I tried to write to that, and it just wasn't my strength, right? I couldn't write a good sex joke because at the time I was a virgin, right? So it's like you're like, how am I writing? And they say write what you know, and I did not know how to write like really good dirty jokes because there are fantastic jokes that are that have touchier subjects, and that just wasn't my strong suit, and
Uh,
so yeah, a couple years in, I started like completely trashing a lot of the dirtier stuff that I did, to the point that I was like, I'm good being PG-13, right? I think
mm,
PG-13 was good, and then more recently, yeah, I think I pretty much I try only write clean now, just because you like if you write a really great joke and you're super excited about it, but it's dirty, that you've limited the audience a little bit. Because
exactly.
now I can do that at clubs, I can do that wherever. Can't do it at corporate, depending on the corporate, and I can't do it at dry bar. And so it's like it's yeah, I think it's more suited to me and my stage persona to write clean. And so for the most part, I think uh, if it's a weekend show and everyone else on the show is being dirty or whatever, and I have a joke, and usually it's not like I have a joke, it's not like a whole bit. It's like I'll have like a
Right.
punchline, and I'll just I'll toss it in there that one time that might be a little riskier, but it's never anything, you know, never anything R rated for sure.
Right. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I always told comedians when I used to teach comedy with my stand-up and tell everybody, you know, uh, it's always better to write clean because that's you'll get a lot more work, especially corporate work and church work. But
Yeah.
have you ever thought like, okay, hey, I can sing, I can act, I can do comedy. Why am I still in Utah? Should I go to California? Should I go to New York? Well, what should I do? Have you ever had that thought?
Yeah, I mean, so my wife, um, she really wants to leave Utah. Like she would love to live. I mean, when I asked her where she'd like to live, she just said anywhere, like anywhere that's not here. She just wants to change the scenery just because new experiences, new people, right?
Right.
And so yeah, it's the times I visited New York, I'm like I could live here. Like this seems besides the rent, I mean, it's kind of it's kind of pricey, but and we've taken trips to Southern California and stuff. I don't know that I would ever be able to live in LA proper. just because
Right.
it's the traffic. I if it was like a walking kind of city, like like New York or like Portland, where you can kind of get around pretty well with mass transit. LA just doesn't seem like it's that level. Everything's still very spread out, and so I don't know. It's California is beautiful, New York's beautiful. Um, if I guess if I got a job out there, then it would make it a lot easier to make that move because like I said, the rent and things at places. And I've had a lot of friends do that and be successful, and I've had a lot of friends do that and end up coming back because it's hard. Like, and I guess if I'm gonna do it, I probably should do it before I have kids.
And you're married to Ellie. Ellie, is it your wife, Ellie? Is
Yeah.
she tall or is she's not as
Thankfully, yeah, she's 5'11 and a half, I guess. I say 6 foot on stage because it's just easier to say. But yeah, she's pretty tall. Um, she I think she is the shortest person in our family now. And my mom has given her crap in the past just as a joke, like we're taking a family picture for Christmas or something, and she'd be like, short people in the front. My wife's like, who's short? She's like, you're the short one.
get in the front. Oh, that's
But yeah,
funny. Now, your parents, did they grow up Mormon in Utah or no?
yeah,
They were
yeah, they
Mormon,
both. Mhm.
but were they practicing or non-practicing?
Um, yeah, they stopped practicing fairly young, I guess. Because I mean, and it was little things that led them down that road of small town people judging and gossip and things. And my mom loves coffee, and so her, that's a big no-no. And so people, we had neighbors who, like, me and my brother would hang out with them, and then they'd find out that my mom drank coffee, and they're like, well, I don't know about that. I don't think we can really you can't be friends anymore because they're heathens over there with their coffee. It's
Oh, oh man, how could you drink coffee?
yeah, there's
See,
nothing
I
there's
couldn't
nothing
make
that's
it.
less healthy than coffee.
Oh, is there caffeine in your Dr. Pepper?
Oh, so much caffeine. I just inject it into my veins. That's all I need. That's some Dr. Pepper, some Mountain Dew.
Do you ever do political jokes?
I made the mistake of doing one in my dry bar special, and it really was. Like, people. Some of the comments are so funny to me because it wasn't like it was this like big predetermined, oh, I'm going to make this political stance. I just had a
Uh,
joke that I made about President Trump, and people just freaked out. And I'm like, you guys, I'm not like this political mastermind. I'm not out here trying to. I'm not a liberal snowflake trying to burn down the establishment. Like, it was literally like, I think the week before I filmed my special, I just had the thought in the shower, like, oh, that'd be funny. Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll just add this little joke in it, and it's kind of crazy, like the lack of a sense of humor that some political people have when they get really entrenched in, like, if some I see Biden jokes all the time, I see Bernie jokes, I've seen Hillary jokes, and some of them are funny, some of them are
mhm,
dang funny, and I just
mhm,
think that people need to laugh a little more because, like, it's pretty rare that you're going after someone's character. Like, it's usually superficial dumb stuff that makes people laugh. Like,
right.
and for whatever reason, yeah, there's people on both sides I've seen that just have gotten so
You're
visceral
right.
about jokes, right? Like, you're like, sleepy Joe Biden. It's like, what are you talking about? He's not. It's like, who cares? Who cares? Like,
It's a
it
joke.
doesn't.
You're right. And
It's
I
a
think
joke. Like, yeah.
comedians, we have to be in that middle ground, because we're looking at life from a different, from the, from outside, and we're looking at the culture, and we're making comments on each culture. And it bothers me sometimes when comedians are so into one. It's okay. You can have your own beliefs, conservative or liberal, but when you're on stage and your goal as a comedian is to get the audience to love you and to like you and to make them laugh, that's our goal, is to make them laugh. I don't feel like political humor can, it's going to divide the audience right away.
Right. And if you have your audience, right? Like if the people who are coming to you are expecting to see some great conservative political humor, then that's going to be the audience. And if you have someone walk on off the street who's a Democrat or liberal, whatever, then they're going to hate it. And that's
Yeah.
that's you know it's a choice that people make, right? If you want to be a political pundit type comedian, um, I mean, even but I think you're right. I think comedians in general are a lot more. I've just noticed recently that I've had a lot of really positive conversations with friends from both sides of the aisle about politics, and I think it's because comedians that they know, like it's kind of a fraternity of sorts, I guess.
Yeah.
Like we all know that we're doing a hard thing, and so when you get together and talk about politics, you don't get angry because you realize that like there's already like a built-in humanity there, and I think that's what a lot of people have lost, is just kind of a sense of like, oh, they're not evil, they're not stupid. Everyone's doing something because they think it's in their own self-interest. They think it's in the self-interest of society. Most people are rational people, is what I found. Is like most people, if you like talk it out with them, they have good reasons, right? Like you're like, oh, you're not just out here being a terrible person on purpose. Like at
Right,
least good
right.
reasons
Yeah.
to them, right?
Are you optimistic about what's going on in our nation in the future in the election? Are you optimistic about it?
I don't know. I think I'm typically a pessimist, just or maybe I don't know. I've been an optimist a lot of my life, right? Like I'm always like things are getting better, and I see things every day that just remind me of like the goodness in people and like just the positivity of human nature. Um, but there is a lot of scary stuff recently. Just uh, it, kind of the hero worship that goes on with politics now is weird to me. This is kind of a bit of a tangent, but we went to Portland, right?
Yeah.
Portland's very very liberal,
Better liberal.
and yeah, super liberal, and people. So there was a lot of Biden signs around, and there was a lot of advertisements and stuff, and I was like, that makes sense. I live in Utah. Utah is very conservative, and so down my neighborhood, there's lots of Trump signs. Like that's just
Right.
that's kind of how it is. What I didn't expect or to see in Portland, we were driving out to the coast. We rented a car for a day. Well, we rented a truck for the day. It was the first time I'd ever rented a truck, and of course, the first time I ever rented a truck, we accidentally ended up in a Trump parade. There was like I've never. Like I said, I'm a hybrid driver, and so I'm like, okay, I guess we'll get the truck since it's the only thing left. We're merging in two lanes, and we just see there's this parade of 20 or so trucks with Trump flags just like
In
all down the thing
Oregon, in Portland.
in Oregon. Yeah, and so we're like, oh, interesting, and we're trying to get past them, and then the lanes merge, and so now we're just right in the middle
You're in the
of this
parade.
of the parade, and we're just like, oh, this looks like support. I think if we're driving a truck which is fine. But it the thing that struck me as odd about that was just that I don't, in my lifetime anyway, I haven't seen the kind of fanfare with politicians, right? Like I didn't see people getting up being so supportive and just absolutely going bonkers for George W. Bush, right? Or
Right.
Al Gore or any of the past candidates. It's like nobody was getting crazy about it, and nobody was saying like, I hate you because you're voting for blah. I hate you
Right.
because you're not voting for blah. Um, so that's the thing that's kind of weird to me, and it makes me a little bit pessimistic of just like it's become this celebrity position as president, where it used to be a civil servant role. um
Have
and I don't
you
know if there's a way
watched?
to fix that.
Yeah. Have you watched that Netflix show about social media dilemma and
Oh, I
how?
haven't, but I've heard good things. People
Yeah.
tell me I should.
Yeah. Because you're a computer engineer and you know about cybersecurity and all that. One of the things that were, I didn't watch the whole thing yet, but they were talking about like involvement from Russia and China and Iran to where trying to convince certain people that to, it's like it building hate among people. Like if you're liberal, you better hate those Trump supporters. And if you're a Trump supporter, you better, those are the most evil, are the left. What's your take? You think it's easy to And you do cybersecurity for corporations, right?
Well,
Or you know a
I,
lot
I just
about it.
I write software, but yeah, I it's honestly pretty crazy. I had a friend of mine, another software engineer, share um he shared like a poll or a quiz or whatever, right? One of those type of things, and it was called like spot the bot or spot the, and so they had I think they had 8 or so confirmed Russian influence type like uh, profiles that had been confirmed from the Russian government that like or from U.S. intelligence that they were like actively trying to sway elections and change people's minds via social influence. Um,
Wow.
and the quiz was you would look at a profile and you'd say whether it was a real person or whether it was one of these Russian bots designed to look like a real person. And they gave you the whole profile, and I'm scrolling through. I failed. Like I thought several of them were real, and I thought several of them were not real. And it's honestly so difficult because they've gotten so advanced in their
Yeah.
manipulations that like I just, and so ever since I saw that, I'm just it's been very important to me that when I see an article, uh, left or right, doesn't matter, like whatever agenda they're pushing, I always try to corroborate that story, because typically if someone posts a one-off article and you Google it and you can't find anything about that, then it's BS, right? It's nothing.
Right.
Um, and so I saw, and honestly, the search engine optimization, the SEO that people do to some of these articles to make
Yeah.
them sensational and clickbaity, it's pretty deceiving, and I've seen it on both sides really. The kind of stuff they're able to do. One that I saw recently that was, I think, intentionally incendiary was they showed the picture for it. So the title said, U.S. voter fraud found in Pennsylvania or whatever,
Mm.
ballots being thrown out, and this is a true story, right? And so I was like, oh man, and someone shared it. Conservative friend of mine had shared that, and I was like, wow, that's not good. We should look into that. And so I clicked on the article. The image for the article, like the main image, showed a poll worker with just like a freaking just a dumping thousands of ballots, right? But it was just
Uh,
a stock image of a poll worker just dumping ballots into another sorting machine. So it wasn't
uh,
actually, but it made it look like this poll worker was dumping thousands of ballots into the garbage because of the way the title had been phrased. And I read the article, and I went and looked up I think 6 other sources to see what all the, because I feel like if you look at sources from the left and the right, and you read all of them all the way through, you can get a pretty good picture of what actually happened instead of what
mm.
people are trying to get you to think. Um, and I read that, and it turns out it was 9 ballots. They had erroneously opened, um, I think 6 of them or something, and all of those votes were for Trump. Um, and so, but the way they phrased the article was, we found ballots, all of them were for Trump, and here's this picture of someone dumping thousands. And so
Wow.
most people who are just sitting there scrolling through social media are going to see the headline, they're going to see the image, they're not going to check other sources, and they're going to have a knee-jerk, emotional reaction to that. And I think that's exactly what people who are influencing elections will do, because they understand that a lot of media is now consumed in these little bite-sized chunks, and people either don't have the time or don't want to have the time to read the full thing or do their own research. And so it is, I mean, I think Facebook and Twitter and a lot of these like micro dopamine platforms where they just give you the little happies and the little happies and sads that you get all day from scrolling. It's a perfect storm for anyone to influence it, right? Like all you have to do is create the accounts and have enough manpower behind it to really go out and change people's minds just based on the emotional processing centers of the brain,
Right.
not the rational stuff. And I think that's where a lot of
Explain.
this is coming from.
I hope everyone who's watching and listening would do what you're doing, because sometimes they just read something and they start sharing it to all their friends who believe the same thing. Look
Yeah,
at it.
the
What is a
sharing. I
bot?
know
You
that's
mentioned something about bot. What's the bot for people who don't understand what a bot? It's not an actual profile. It's a Russian bot or something. What is that? How? What?
so a bot is, I mean, more or less, it's a script designed to post things on an interval that looks like a human, right? A bot on the internet and in like cybersecurity, for the most part, is just something that is impersonating a human, meant to do things a human would do but automatically, right? When you get a telemarketer or like the robocallers, it's
Yeah.
essentially the same thing, but for the internet, right? So
Mm,
it's like they have some automated process which lets them do what they're doing at a scale that's very hard to combat, right? And
mm,
so the thing with a lot of these profiles, and I'm not sure the exact specifics, but they'll they'll have a real human create it because they have all the protections, the captures and the stuff. You have to click this if you're a human, and check this box if you're not a robot. We've all seen those. Those are all designed to keep bots out from being created programmatically. Um, but once the accounts are there, and until they get flagged as being those type of accounts, they basically have free reign to just like create posts because Facebook and Twitter, they all create application programming interfaces, APIs, to allow other like uh, benevolent programs made by people to do important and good things. Like when you schedule a post, there's tons of software out there that can help you create like a whole social media calendar, right? A whole schedule of things, and so you can
yeah.
post something and it'll call out to Facebook via one of these APIs and say, okay, actually post it on this date, or do this at this. And so like those APIs exist for good reasons, but then bots are able to use those same APIs to post things to 500,000 accounts who look very similar with very slightly varied content, so that they all look like real humans. Um, and yeah, I mean
Uh, Scary.
it is scary, and I think one of the big things that would fix a lot of the social tampering that we have in America and just in the world in general with the internet is really solid identity. Like if we had something online that was like as secure, or I mean more secure than like a cryptographic key, um, something to say like, I'm Seth, you're Nazareth, we're having a conversation, and that's verified by these four servers or whatever. Because
Uh,
the U.S. government has identity. They use social security number, which is complete crap, and or driver's licenses, and the stuff on the back of the driver's license. I always thought that these barcodes on the back, I thought that those had some special information, some extra secret key. It's actually just all the stuff on the front encoded. So
I
it's
didn't know
actually
that.
it. I know it. I was hoping that it meant something like, I'm here in person, you have my card. But I think if we had something like that, just in the U.S., if it was provided by the government, if it was provided by whatever, that it would make something like Facebook less error prone, because you wouldn't be able to just create profiles up the wazoo. I could create 48 profiles right now and start posting Seth Tippetts is great, like
This
because
is
because
good.
there's no verification. Anyway,
You're very intelligent. I mean, just from what you're saying
oh
and sharing
stop.
and all that. And being a comedian, I always know comedians have high IQs. To be a comedian, to be able to look, to remove yourself and look at things and make jokes about them, you have to be intelligent. And why are you an atheist? I mean, I'm sorry. That's a quick question. This is not like, oh, this is about, we're still comedians. We're still laughter for all. It's just not political or religious show. We're not trying to convince each other. But I want to hear your in. I want to hear what you think, because I personally, I don't know if I bubbled myself with people like my, but I've never had a friend who's an atheist, and you're my first atheist friend, and I hope I can consider you a friend, and I'd look forward to more, to maybe perform together or something.
Yeah.
Why are you an atheist? Is it because was it because the neighborhood was too religious that you said I have nothing to do with it, or you came to your own conclusion as a smart person?
That I had a couple courses in college that, and I was leaning that way because for a long time I considered myself agnostic. Um, just less that I didn't. I think I wanted to believe that a God existed, right? Like
Mm.
I wanted to believe in an afterlife, um, but I wasn't sure that anything that other the religions that I had studied um, were really doing it in a way that would make me a better person and have a better life. And so I have a lot of Christian friends. I have a lot of Mormon friends, and and I've had that same thought, like as much as I hate to admit it, of just like, you're so smart, why are you still a Christian? Why are you still, and it's kind of, and a lot of the arguments, not arguments, the discussions we've had about religion and stuff, it always boils back down to kind of a root cause, right? Like we can argue around in circles for a long time, and then it'll typically boil down with most of my religious friends to just like, well, that's just what I believe, right?
Mhm.
And um, I think I was raised with a mind towards science, and that doesn't mean that science is better than religion. I think they can coexist in a lot of cases. A lot of my friends who consider themselves scientists are Christian, right? Like there's explanations that make sense, and there's certain things that you have to take a la carte. Like I think there's a lot of stuff in religious texts that is provably false, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable. And I think that there's wisdom to be gathered from almost all religious texts. It just takes viewing it through a certain lens for the most part. Um, I I'm perfectly content as an atheist, and me and my wife share this view of just kind of, I think it's been described as either optimistic nihilism or existentialism, where I believe that there is no such thing as objective truth. Um, I don't think there's an objective like right and wrong. I think those things are influenced by individuals in society, and because there's no objective truth, um, and there's nothing that's like, oh, a sunset is beautiful objectively, right? Like we could show that to an alien, we could show that to every person on the entire planet, and they would all say this is a beautiful sunset. That's never going to happen, right? Because people have different opinions and people have different perspectives. And so I think if you remove objective truth, which is one of the main tenets of nihilism, um, then you can say, well, I can add value to things subjectively, right? I can say my family has value to me, and having this conversation with you is valuable to me because I'm willing to spend time. Like time, I think is people's most valuable asset, and who you choose to spend your time with, I think, is important. Um, and if I care about the environment, if I care about politics, if I care about civil duty, those things all I've given value to them. I don't believe that anything by itself has intrinsic value, because at the end of the day, like who's somebody in history who's just done something so monumental, right? Like Alexander the Great or whatever. He's a footnote in a history book now, and 10,000 years from now, he won't even be that. Like there's nothing that we can do on this earth in our short lifetimes that I think will have any lasting effect to like to the universe as a whole. Um, and I don't, and a lot of people, a lot of people think that that's kind of sad. And that, I had a conversation with a lady who bought Ellie's car, who was like, "How do you live with yourself? That sounds so depressing." And I think it's the opposite. I think it's really special that we're on this earth for the time we're here. Um, and I think that our unique perspectives are the thing that makes human beings valuable. I think that if you're not going out and living every day and then seeing beauty in the people you work with and the people you meet, that you're kind of wasting a wonderful opportunity, whether that opportunity was given to us by God or just a random coincidence. I think it's still an opportunity that people can choose to embrace or waste. I don't know. That was kind of a long-winded.
No, I just and again, I mean, there's always like in the back of my head as a Christian, as someone who's does comedy and I always like, okay, what about this? What about this? But that's not the goal from this podcast. It's just the goal is I want to hear your view and I want to hear what keeps you faithful to your wife if you know there's no eternal consequences to it.
I think the same thing that keeps a lot of people faithful, just that I love her to death, and I can't imagine myself with another person. Um, and the times that you like, because everyone sees an attractive person and says, "Wow, that person's pretty hot. They got it going on." But then I think of all the shared experiences me and my wife have had, and I think of how she exactly understands my humor, and we've just had so many intimate, wonderful moments in our 3 years of marriage already, that I'm just like, that doesn't compare. Like, what's an attractive person to this person that I've shared so much of my life with? And yeah, I just, I think it's kind of funny to me just that that there's a kind of a stigma where religious folks have they say, well, why aren't you out there murdering everybody? And it's like, well, I I, I believe that those are valuable people, right? Like, I think uh, it's just weird that, like, because that is a thing I've heard a lot. Like, when you say something,
Mm.
oh, I'm an atheist, they're like, well, so how come you're not out here just doing drugs and murdering everybody? And it's like, well, because that would be frowned upon in society, and I believe in the greater good of society. And, like, if everyone in society started murdering people and I was the lone weirdo not murdering people, um, would I be wrong? Right? Like, you start asking these questions of what objective morality is, and I think that religion has done a good job of kind of institutionalizing morality and kind of giving people a good baseline. But I do think that everyone's individual moral and ethical journeys require testing, right? Like, I think
Right.
if you're like, I'm a good person, that's a pretty vague comment, and you don't know that you're a good person until you're put in a situation where you can do good or you can do bad, right? And it's
Right.
like, I'm a patient person, and it's like, well, how do you know? And so I kind of just, yeah, I feel like deciding what you're going to do in hard situations is like the basis of a lot of ethics and philosophy. And I think that's a lifelong journey, because you don't know what
Yeah.
you're going to do, and we don't know what's around the corner. I mean, think about people in the last 100 years. um, Homosexuality was a very new thing for a lot of people, because that just wasn't talked about. And so there's a lot of ethical questions that for a long time people didn't have to ask or wonder about, and now they're just having to say, like, do I believe in gay marriage? Do I believe that these people deserve the same rights I do? They have different beliefs than me. We believe in religious freedom. Do we believe in, gender equality? Uh, you know,
You,
sexual
you, you're
preferences. Anyway,
you're right. Unfortunately, in mostly in this country, when people say religious, they think of these extreme religious people. Where I personally, like, I came from a Greek Orthodox Christian background. In 1992, I really found out that, hey, I was doing cocaine, living. I wasn't a good person, and I'm still not a good person. But what I did is I embraced the teaching of Jesus Christ. So I had, this is what changed my life. This is what I based my life in, and Jesus told me not to judge anyone. So I'm not judging anyone. But there's when someone comes to you, why, if you're not a Christian, why shouldn't you kill everybody? Oh, I mean, this is crazy that people would
right.
say that. But to me, whenever I think of a person who's an atheist, my question is like, so you've checked everything and you came to this ultimate conclusion that there's no designer for this universe. That's my only question I would ask someone who's an atheist. And I'm going to ask you that just because you're my first friend who's an atheist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even think I think it's one of those unknown unknowns, right? Um, with our existing, with whatever state our reality is in, it's really impossible for us to verify the existence of something, um, like God, or an afterlife, with the tools we have, right? And as a scientist, as or as someone who proclaims himself a scientist, I think
Right.
it's I think the biggest thing that science provides that I love is, if there's new evidence, you change your viewpoint, right? If we had some scientific evidence that, like, we knew what happened before the Big Bang, for example, then I'd have to change some of my views, right? I'd have to be like, oh, interesting. Let's get some more data. Let's talk. And so it's not that I believe I believe that there's not a God, just because, or at least a Judeo-Christian God, because a lot, that there's the whole argument of, what's the benevolent, omnibenevolent. Oh, did you freeze? Or are you
No,
just very
I'm
still?
here. I'm entertained. I'm in, what do you call it? I'm intrigued with what you're saying. No, I'm
So
not
the
frozen.
omnibenevolent, omnipotent, and omniscient, right? The
Yeah.
trifecta of all powerfulness. And
Yeah.
and that was one of the things we talked about in one of my favorite courses in college, which was the philosophy of God and religion, right? We talked about atheists, theists, different versions of God, and typically the Judeo-Christian version of God is those three things, and they then the next argument is always the purpose of needless evil, because there's what could be considered necessary evil that would be part of God's plan, that like you need to have these trials, so you're gonna try this cocaine, you're gonna do this whatever. um but then there's needless evil that's like, why did a baby deer in the forest die from a forest fire and nobody was around to witness it? And that was the example they gave. And
Mm.
so then you have to question, is he all good? Does he not care about things that aren't humans? Is that still all good? There's a baby dying of cancer, an orphan dying of cancer, right? So it's not even that the parents are learning a lesson in like humility or the value of life or something. It's someone, because that stuff, terrible things happen all the time, all throughout the world, and I think that's one of the harder things for me to reconcile with a God.
Yeah.
George Carlin had some great jokes about atheism, and just that, like, if God exists, he probably doesn't care about us, and that's an easier version for me to believe, just because, or that he selectively cares, right? If he's not omniscient, like if I like kind of like the what was the movie with Jim Carrey, Bruce Almighty,
Yeah.
where he was all powerful, but he wasn't omniscient, and he wasn't all good because he was just like a guy, and so he was trying his best to like keep up with everything and like answer prayers and not disrupt the balance, and it just proved really hard in a really comedic way, and that's one of the reasons I like that movie. I'd believe in a version of God that's like that he's like just trying his best, but
So
it's
you're
it's
not
a
an
hard
atheist
problem.
if you believe in a version of God. But you
I
know what?
just
I mean, I look at it
I
that
just
way.
believe in
You're
one less God than you do. That's a friend of mine had a joke that, because there's polytheism, right? People that believe in like multiple gods, like the
yeah.
Greek gods of old or whatever. And so I'm not an atheist. Or everyone's an atheist. They all just believe in one less God.
Okay, because I mean, I look at your life. You're blessed. You have a great, your great wife, your great job. You're living in the U.S. So it's and I know so many people. I've been all over the world, in Haiti and in Egypt and in the Gaza Strip, and I've seen people's your age whose life is just miserably well. And you'd go, why him and why not that? But there's a lot of answers that I would love, but that's not my goal today. Is just to hear your heart, to hear what you think, to hear what is hope for you. What do you hope for? And I mean, what gives you hope? What motivates you?
I see so many people that are just very active in what the change they want to see in the world, and while technology is kind of currently playing on our weaknesses, I feel like I think that it could play to our strengths, and I would love to see a future with more equality for and not even like in terms of like legal and rights and stuff, but just the fact that it's hard to make a wage and raise a family on some of the salaries in America, and
Right.
uh, the wage disparity and I get that capitalism is a big thing. A lot of people love it. It's a system that has worked fairly well in historical scenarios, right? Um, but there comes a point where it's like maybe you need some extra handrails, right? And I don't know. I think we're heading in we could be heading in a very good direction, and I think it just depends on each individual doing their part to be educated and think about, be cognizant about their lives and how they affect other people. And I think we'll be okay as a species.
Right. As we wrapping the show, I love it that we can live in a nation where we can maybe, I agreed with a lot of stuff. I probably completely disagree with the atheism and what is about being good or not good and all that and God maybe, but it's okay. This is not the goal. There's other shows where they argue that. I'm here to know. I'm going to ask you a few questions before I close and just get me a funny response. What do you say to dog
Uh-oh.
owners that don't clean up after their dogs?
Uh, To dog owners that don't clean up after. Are you telling the jokes, or am I? Are the
No, you
punchlines
tell me.
pre-written?
What's your immediate? Just give me a quick response as a comedian. Just a quick response. What do you tell
Come
someone
on,
like?
Dad.
How about a door-to-door salesman knocking on your door? What do you say to them to get rid of them?
Get your droplets off my lawn. It's a COVID joke. It's a COVID joke. It's a.
Oh, how about people who talk loudly on their mobile phone next to you?
Oh, I don't know if I can say anything bad about that. I'm a fairly loud talker myself.
People that park in handicap parking when you're not disabled, when they're not disabled.
I tell them, I got a golf club in the back. I could rectify this problem for you.
How about tailgaters? What do you say to them? They're coming next behind you in the car.
Ugh, I usually I get some bad road rage, and it's kind of funny that I rented a truck because I've had, like, as enlightened as I pretend to be, and trying to be a good person and stuff. Boy, I have an unhealthy prejudice towards people who drive trucks. Every time there's somebody on the freeway with a truck who cuts me off or is tailgating me with the big flashy lights, they're so bright that I can, like, smell color, ugh, taste blood. I hate. I don't hate truck drivers. I need to stop saying that. My wife wants me to get rid of this prejudice before we have children, so that we don't teach our children to hate truck drivers.
but, but the drive. What are you working on right now, comedic wise, comedy wise?
So I'm headlining this weekend at Wise Guys in Ogden, and I've been I, my big chunk that I've been working on for the last, and I think I did it at the Dry Bar show where I opened for your son. Um, but just my misinformation chunk. So it's like I have jokes about flat earthers, I have jokes about anti-vaxxers, jokes about essential oils. I've started to have some jokes about, like, pest control salesmen, and so that whole thing is it's I'm pretty excited about it. It's turning into a pretty fun bit, to the point that I might be able to close with it, because my anti-vaxxer joke has a pretty strong closing, a
Mm.
couple lines. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm pretty excited about that. Me and my brother have been working on a script for a sitcom, because we wanted to start writing scripts a little bit more, because a lot of our sketches have been fairly improvised, and so we're trying to get a little more structure with it and write some sketches and some scripts.
How often do you write comedy?
Um, so, like, if I'm just out and about, like, most of my jokes come from stories, and usually I'm telling those stories to friends or whatever. So I'll write down a quick note if I tell a story that's funny, and then I'll typically, a couple times a week, I'll sit down and try to flesh those out. Usually Monday night I write with my brother for a couple hours, and then before open mic on Wednesday at Wise Guys, I'll typically try to see what my little tiny jokes were throughout the week, and then see if I can add some more to them or make them flesh them out a little bit more. But I know I
Awesome.
should write more.
How can people get a hold of you, Seth?
Well, I have a website. I don't know if it's working. You'd think a software engineer would have a better website, but
I have been
as
to
they
it. It's
say,
it doesn't have much, but it has your dates and it has your picture and it has it's working.
yeah, as as the saying goes, the shoemaker's children go barefoot. Because I just have never had time for my own website. But so I think my website, my Facebook, Seth.Tippetts, I think it is on Facebook, Seth Tippetts on Twitter. Um, I have a TikTok, but I think I posted like 3 videos and they're not very good. My wife's more TikTok famous than I am.
And you're on Dry Bar under Seth Tippetts, Tippetts. Very funny.
Yep.
Watch him. Thank you so much for
Tippetts.
yes.
Two T's, two P's, like
Two
toilet
T's
paper.
and two
I wish there
P's.
was a better way to
Yeah.
remember that, but that's
Two T. Well, thank you so much for being and taking the time to be with me for this hour. Thanks for opening your heart, sharing with us, and would love to
well, thank
work
you.
with you soon. Maybe
Yeah.
in a comedy club somewhere. And yes, again, thank you
Well,
guys so much for watching the
thanks for
Laughter
having
for
me.
All. You're welcome. It's my honor. And Thank you for listening to Laughter for All podcast. I'm comedian Nazareth. Remember, every weeknight at 8:30 p.m., I have a live show called Live with Naz on Facebook Live. And until next time, next week, I'm going to have a young lady she's a best-selling author that talks about, she's probably 22. When she was 17, she wrote a best-selling book about school bullying, teenage, and the challenges that teenagers go through. So she's not a comedian, but we'll get to learn. That's the goal. We learned a lot today. We're going to continue to learn. Love you guys. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Have a great week.